Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to What Are You Painting Now? And we are ending up a very special week on the Genestealers. We're going to be taking a look at competitive play for both Genestealers and Genestealer Cult. Let's get right to it. So, for something to be competitive, we must first define what competitive play is, because something that is competitive in 1000 points isn't necessarily competitive in 2000 points. So, based off what people play, I say that competitive play is 1850 points. Additionally, I'm going to go off the Australian model of the three different games played, which is 1 Maelstrom, 1 Eternal War, and 1 Kill Points. So, that is what I call competitive play. Alright, so here's some assumptions. Now, if you know where I'm going with this, you know what I'm doing. So, I'm assuming that you own Codex Tyranids and that you own the Leviathan Rising data slate, and that you own this white dwarf which has Shield of Baal, and I very much hope that you own the Deathwatch Overkill rules because they're free. Alright, moving right along. So let's take a look at the Genestealer. So the thing is, it's very hard to compare in a vacuum and say how good they are. So what I'm going to say is that the baseline stat for everything is 3 except for attacks, which is 1, wounds, which is 1, and leadership, which is 7. As well as I'd say that their save is pretty average. So let's take a look at the Genestealer. So they've got an amazing weapon skill, they have good strength and toughness, they've got 1 wound, amazing initiative, and a good number of attacks, as well as an amazing leadership score. Pretty average armor, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Additionally, their special rules are pretty decent. So, first off, they've got Rending Claws, which is a Tyranid special rule, which means they've got Rending, as you may have guessed. They've got Bulky with the broodlord, which just means if you're landing them in the Mycetic Spore, that he's going to cost extra points to have in the Mycetic Spore. Points as in number of models. Right, they've got Fleet, which allows them to move faster during the shooting phase. They have Infiltrate, which allows them to deploy on the board much further up than other units, which is very important. They've got Move Through Cover, and the broodlord can be a psyker. So, the other big thing is base sizes. So I've got them off there to the side. So with their base sizes, most of you guys are going to have your Genestealers on 25mm bases, though how they're currently based in the magazines and in the Deathwatch Overkill is on 32mm, and I recommend taking them up to that because that allows for more combat. Alright, now your broodlord can be on just about any base. I do believe that the original one came with 40mm. Though, if you're basing the broodlord or the Spawn of Cypherus, which is on this one, you can have them on just about any base. Alright, moving right along. So, the big thing with these guys are, we're just going to take a look at them in a vacuum for a moment. So, let's take a look at some of their special rules. So, let's say that you wanted to improve your Genestealers. So, you might take Scything Talons. Scything Talons is actually a decent choice for them. Gives them an extra attack in close combat because then they have 2 close combat weapons. Next up, we've got the Adrenal Glands. Now, Adrenal Glands are not actually that good for the Genestealer. See, Adrenal Glands give both Fleet and Furious Charge, and as you may have noticed, they already have Fleet. So you're only paying for half of the ability. Furious Charge, of course, you must charge, which is conditional. You never really want to pay for conditional things. It's a little better for attacking vehicles, but that is about it. Next up, we have Toxin Sacs. Now, Toxin Sacs cost even more than Adrenal Glands, and the thing is, it gives them poison. as you may have guessed. Poison, on average, they will be able to re-roll most of the time because they will have a higher strength than their opponent's toughness. But if you're versing Marines and so on, you're just going to be rolling on a 4+ anyway, and you have just made your models cost 3 more for no particular reason at all. So, going off that, let's talk a bit more about competitive play. So, when looking at competitive play, we must keep in mind the metagame. Now, the metagame is the game beyond the game. So, in our case, that means Space Marines. Now, of those 3 games that you're going to play, I'd say that there is a very good chance that you're going to be versing 1, maybe 2 Space Marine teams throughout the day. So the big thing is, what I'm going to be taking a look at with these guys is a little formula so that you can try and understand why it's important to build things a certain way, because we are building for this metagame. So we're building under the assumptions that it's 1850, that you're going to be having 3 different types of games, and that there's going to be at least 1 Marine player. So rather than saying they're going to have the special weapons and so on, I'm going to assume that they all have bolt guns. This is just for generalization's sake. But with the current formations, a lot of them might just have bolt guns and a rhino or razorback. But that's another story. So, let's assume that only half of them are in range for rapid fire. Now, let's take a look at this simple formula. That is, the bolt gun's average amount of fire versus the Space Marine's ballistic skill divided by the Genestealers' toughness versus the weapon strength equals your average number of casualties. So, for a group of 10 Marines, that figures to this little equation here. Now, that leads us on to our next part. So, we have this formula, and it does not look good for the Genestealers. You're losing, on average, 5 Genestealers around. That is not competitive. However, we do have this stuff. It is extremely important to keep Genestealers in cover if you want to be competitive with them. And that is what Genestealers are good for. They are very good for taking objectives and keeping them because they have objectives secure, because they are troops. Very important. Alright, so the next thing is we add the cover save to that and we end up with something like this. And as we see, we're only losing 2, because you don't round up because it's 5, on average. Now, of course, this is only comes into play with the law of large numbers and so on. However, I'm trying to use generalizations so that we can move on. Alright, moving right along, let's take a look at some of the important things to remember. So like I said, it's 1850, you've got the 3 missions. What is the next thing? So what is important in these things in competitive play? In my opinion, it is the following: survivability, flexibility, and lethality. So, in kill points, it is actually better to keep one of your units alive than it is to kill one of theirs, because you're denying them victory points. Flexibility is a term I've used for the ability to be where they're meant to be, the ability to play in a way that helps your cause. So this might be scoring an objective, this might be tying down some units and so on. Lethality is their ability to destroy enemy units. So taking a look at this, how does the Genestealer come up? It doesn't exactly fit. Now, they're pretty decently survivable if they're in cover, and they are very survivable if they're in close combat. 1, because of their high toughness versus your average guy. 2, because of their ridiculous weapon skill. So people are generally going to have a harder time to hit, they're going to have a harder time to wound, and the Genestealers are quite often going to be able to break your opponents. Lethality is rather low, and you might be questioning that because they can be very efficient in close combat, but that's the problem. They can only be good in close combat. So, you may have guessed from all of this that your average Genestealer is a lot more of a fluffy choice than it is a competitive choice. But like I said, we're taking a look at competitive play. So, here are the important things to remember. Before, we said that we're going to be losing 2 on average per round if we look at that. So, for the purposes of scoring objectives and so on, what we want in the average squad is not 5, but at least 8 guys in the squad to keep it survivable. And this is a good squad size that you can keep in cover. And the next thing is the broodlord. Now, when we take a look at the broodlord, we're going to take a look at some of his upgrades. Only the ones that the other troops don't have, because we've already got our opinion on that. Acid blood is actually not a bad choice. I know that sounds very odd, but if you do the maths on it, right, he is great in challenges. He will challenge the hell out of anyone. But remember that every wound scored by that opposing character could kill them with acid blood. So it makes it a lose-lose situation and makes these guys into character killers. I think that it's not that bad of a choice, but that is just my opinion. I believe that the math bears it out. However, if the unit gets shot up, well, then they're not that great at all. Next up, we've got regeneration. Now this is an extremely poor choice because it costs half of his points for starters. The second thing is, he is not a singular unit. He goes with the squad. He is not an independent character. Alright? So, on average, he is not going to be taking a wound or 2 wounds and so on. He is either going to be wiped out when the squad is wiped out, or the other Genestealers are going to be taking wounds for him. So, regeneration is very much just pointless. I don't like to be negative, but in this case, please don't take regeneration on your broodlord. Alright, next up, we're going to be taking a look at the formation for the Genestealer cult. Now, I've done another video where I went through everything and I gave my opinions and so on. I've had more updated versions of these opinions because I've played games with these guys. But we're going to be taking a look at the formation and the formation only, because this is the only way you should run these guys, because the formation's ability is amazing. So, first off, it gives infiltrate. That gives it to everyone, which makes those minor guys with the range 24 las cannons very good. You should be destroying a vehicle with them. Additionally, stealth, very good. It allows you to have some level of comfort that your guys will survive. Now, this ambush the unhallowed is very important. Without it, you cannot assault on the first turn if you infiltrated. With this, it allows you to do so. The fearless and adamantium will is less important in my opinion. So, let's take a look at some things. Now, a friend of mine wanted to bring up one thing. He said, on average, you are never going to get against a good opponent someone who is going to let you have guys within 12 inches of their stuff when you're deploying with infiltrators. This, to a degree is true. However, I have found in my games that due to the number of infiltrators and due to the area and due to the size of the squads, you will get one group, just one group that is 12 inches away. And the group that I have been able to get in that gap all of these times is the Brothers Aberrant. And I have to tell you, getting them into close combat in the first turn is amazing. These guys, like I said, revised opinions, absolutely phenomenal. With a decent toughness, feel no pain, and an armor save, these guys are very survivable. So, let's move right along, because there's not too much that can be said about this. But the Genestealers have some levels of variation. Alright, so let's take a look at the next most famous Genestealer formation. Now, the big thing about Genestealers and why they are good is because they have objectives secured and they infiltrate. One person said to me, if you could get a great number of infiltrators on the first turn, as was done with a very popular Tyrannid list with a great number of lictors, you could get as many as all of the objectives on the first turn. If you get the right cards in Maelstrom, you have just won the game then and there, because you will have so many more points than your opponent. So, this is why the Children of Cryptus are very good, because you'll notice they are not a formation, they are a troop choice, and you see up the top above Children of Cryptus, that denotes the Tyrannid faction. So they are a troop choice for Tyrannids. Very important to keep in mind. That means objective secured. So, these guys have Scything Talons, which, like I said, was the best of all of the upgrades that you could give to them. So, let's take a look. They've got Preferred Enemy if he's the Warlord. I wouldn't take that personally, because I think that if you're going to be playing 1850, there is not a strong likelihood of you playing this guy as your Warlord. And the big thing that they get is stealth. This means that they are much more survivable. You change a lot of maths when you have these guys in ruins. Instead of the 4+, you get a 3+, and so on. It makes a big difference. So, these guys do have a formation. So, you have to take 3 Tyrannid Warriors, which are built a certain way, and Carnifex, which are built a certain way. They're fine, right? They're not fantastic, they're fine. I think the Carnifex for its build is very inefficient, but other than that, they're just fine. Alright? The formation gives you the following. It gives you, if they've got stealth already, like the Children of Cryptus do, Shroud in addition. And the other thing is, whilst that guy is alive, the Spawn of Cryptus, it gives the entire formation Preferred Enemy if he is your Warlord. Now, once again, I don't think that that's worth it. So, in my opinion, this formation is not worth it at all. The Children of Cryptus itself is great, but the formation, not so much. 555 points for a formation which is going to be taking up a large chunk, almost a third of your points. Not worth it. Unlike the Genestealer cult, which are a lot more flexible and are going to cover a lot more space for the same points cost, just a little more. they're not going to be worth it. Children of Cryptus, however, most probably the best Genestealer upgrade you can get. Next up, we have the Manifatorum Genestealers. Now, what do you need? You need 5 broods of Genestealers. Great. Alright. And they can't include additional Genestealers. So, we can't include additional Genestealers, so like we saw, they're not going to be that great. If somebody puts a great deal of shooting into them, they're not going to do too well. Alright, they've got Hit and Run. That is a great special ability. Alright, so they can deploy in any building or ruins as far as 6 inches away. This sounds good, right? So let's take a look at the minimum point cost. 350. So the big thing is they're not too expensive when you look at it like that. However, despite being not too far away, you cannot assault on the first turn if you have infiltrated. So being 6 inches away is pointless. Unless it's getting you an objective, and that 6 inches is extremely important, having that does not a great deal. So I was taking a look, if you could add something to it, would it be worth it? If you could take it up to 8, which is my recommendation for your basic broods, it'd be 560, and once again, that'd be a huge chunk of your army. So I rate it F for fluffy. Maybe F for something else as well. Alright, finally, we have the Broodlord's Hunting Pack. This one is a little better. So, these guys, you have 3 broods of Genestealers. With them, one brood must include a broodlord, but you can only have 1 in the formation. Alright, so how it works is you can either put these guys in reserve or infiltrate them. But the thing is, they can pop up in ruins. Once again, like the ones from before. Okay, and so long as you've got that broodlord, they're going to be getting preferred enemy against a particular guy. So, this is the points cost minimum, right? Just 5 guys and a broodlord, no upgrades. This is when we take it to the preferred 8, and once again, no upgrades. So that's a significant chunk of the army. However, these guys are much, much better at capturing objectives due to their variable way of getting things. And you do not have to have 5 broods. 3 broods are much more manageable. Additionally, they are much more survivable because of the way that this formation works. Having the choice of either having them in there now or having them arrive by a reserve. That allows you to get quite a few objectives, and they're going to be a lot more survivable. So, you can assault off reserve, which is important. Alright, so I'm rating them at a B-. They're decent, not great. So, this is going to end our Genestealer week. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up over the Genestealers. So once again, Genestealers are not exactly the best unit out there. Mainly because of the reasons I mentioned. One, they are not the most survivable. They're decent at it so long as you can get them into cover. If they are out in the open, you can kiss your Genestealers goodbye because they eat bolter fire for breakfast. Now, the next thing is, they do have some decent things. Giving them a broodlord and getting them in cover is going to make them very survivable. Alright, so let's take a look over the formations and think about it. The Genestealer cult formation is very good. I do believe that it's competitive for the reasons that I mentioned. One, you've got all of these guys who can get to all of these objectives quickly. They will not have objectives secure, but hopefully you'll be able to destroy some vehicles with the infantry. Get those aberrants into combat somewhere, and they are most likely going to destroy either a very decent unit or they are going to make mincemeat of a vehicle. Either way, they're going to be quite good for you. Next up, we have the Spawn of Cryptus. Definitely your best Genestealer upgrade. If you're ever going to be playing Genestealers in any upgraded way, I recommend just having that. Genestealers with Scything Talons and the Spawn of Cryptus gives them stealth. 8 guys, brilliant. Alright, after that, we have the Manufactorum Genestealers. Please don't use them if you're thinking of competitive play. They will not help you. Next up, we have the broodlord formation, and there's a bit of a double-edged sword. So they can arrive from reserve and assault in that unique way and so on. They're going to be getting your objectives and so on, but they're no longer a troop choice, so they no longer have objective secure because they're in a formation. So, not as great. Alright, well, that is something very different for me. I hope you guys enjoyed Genestealer Week, and I hope you got something out of it. I'm not sure when I'm going to do anything like this again, but we'll see how things go. Alright, have a good one, guys. See ya!